So, today, our panel will share thoughts that touch on housing options and share insights affecting what we call the missing middle adults. Not subsidized, but also not Rockefeller. So, that's who's here. Hopefully, many of you, and we'll get into that as we go. Just a few housekeeping issues. Please hold your questions until we end all three panelists' comments. We are going to allow good time for questions and answers. In fact, Rocco is going to manage that activity. So have your questions ready. There will be points along the way where the panelists might ask a question. If they do, we'd like you to raise your hands and keep them up for a little bit so we can get a sense of the audience where you're at on some things. And then finally, before leaving, there's a little short survey I would like you could fill out. If they're in the back of the room, plenty of pens back there, so that'll move right along. Okay, with those housekeeping issues in mind, let's get started. So, it's with great appreciation that I get the opportunity today to introduce three very, very significant contributors to today's event. First, we have Heather Zeller, who's the advisory director at a company called One Point Partners. Heather is a West Rockford resident and has lived there over 20 years and has experienced providing a range of strategic planning, development, and financial advisory services to senior living and healthcare providers. She's participated in new campus developments, expansions, repositioning projects all across the country as feasibility consultant, development consultant, and very important banker. So Heather currently works at One Point, which is a development and consulting firm serving primarily non-profit providers of senior living and healthcare in New England. Heather is a member of the West Hartford Scholarship Advisory Board of Directors, right across the street, and is a supporter of local and non-profit organizations. Secondly, Mark Borelli. Mark has done a great job helping us get this started. Mark is the CEO and with the West Hartford Scholarship Housing Development Corporation. Mark is an experienced executive professional with 30 years of combined experience in both senior living and construction management industries. He's dedicated over half that time to affordable housing. Motivated by mission-driven organizations and vested in a vision to expand the communities they serve, Mark is passionate about helping seniors live their lives more independently through healthcare services, community living, and life enrichment programs. Mark now serves as the CEO, most recently appointed to the West Hartford Fellowship Housing Development Corporation and the West Hartford Housing Development Organization. He oversees all portions, including a major campus redevelopment you might have seen on your way in just across the street, which is expected to increase the residency of those households by 50%. And the superstructure is going up, so it's pretty sure. Mark is the immediate past chair of the board of directors of the Connecticut Assisted Living Association and has served both locally and nationally on those programs. Then finally, Kristen Gorski, Economic Development Coordinator for our very own town of West Hartford. Kristen provides extensive outreach to enhance the relationship between the town of West Hartford and local businesses. That includes people who build buildings. Kristen is responsible for business retention and expansion, new business attraction, new development, and small business and entrepreneurial support. She is a liaison between the town and the businesses and the nonprofit organizations, as well as the real estate and the development community. That's a lot of jobs. Etc. Prior to joining the town of West Hartford in 2016, Kristen served the town of Bristol, and prior to that, the greater Boston area in similar capacities. Kristen is recognized by the Chamber as a future leader and by the Hartford Business Journal as one of the award-winning 40 under 40 outstanding young professionals in Greater Hartford. Kristen has served on several nonprofit boards and is focused on economic development and leadership. And with that, I'm going to say thank you and welcome Kristen to the podium. Oh, I'm going to pass it to you. That's it. It's always a work in progress.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kevin, Beth, and Maureen, as well as the entire Senior Citizens Advisory Commission. It is lovely to be here with all of you this morning. It looks as though from the count in the room, we're close to probably 100 attendees here. So really appreciate everybody coming out this morning. So as Kevin had mentioned, I am the Economic Development Coordinator and lead for the town. I have been in that role for going on almost 8 years now. So we have seen a lot of development and new businesses and initiatives in that time period. So want to talk a little bit today, first about demographics, and then to talk about updates on some of those projects over the course of the last several years and where we stand. Great. So with the demographics, one thing that we had discussed and the commission was really interested in is, out of the attendees here today, what is the room made up of? So I have a couple of questions, as you can see on the screen. So as Kevin had indicated, I would love some audience participation via raise of hand, if you will. So we want to get a good feel for who is here. So if you could please raise your hand if you are at least 55 years of age. It's going to be put your hand down again, right? So everybody keep them raised. Put your hand down if you are, keep them up, excuse me. Keep your hand up if you are 65 years of age or older. Almost everybody's still up, great. Keep your hand up if you are at least 75 years of age. About half the room. Excellent. And then lastly, keep your hand up if you are 90 years of age or older. That's wonderful. Thank you. So that gives us a better understanding and sense of all of you here. So really appreciate that interactive element. I have a couple of additional questions. Out of everyone in this room, how many of you are still living in your single family home? Wow. Almost all. Great. And of you who are still in your single family home, how many have been in that home for more than 30 years?
Wow.
Good stats here, right?
Great.
Yeah. Excellent. So almost 50% of you. Great. Excellent. So that's really helpful for us. Mark noted that, as Kevin had indicated, there's a short survey on the way out, but this is very helpful. And so for purposes of the rest of my information, I just wanted to cover some demographic information, and where I had pulled this particular slide from and what I wanted to discuss is, and we also, I didn't print anything, but we could print these for a follow-up. If you wanted this information, we can also make it available via email. Just let us know what works for you. But let me quickly touch on this. So I had pulled this information from CT Open Data. This is demographics based on the last census. The last census was completed in 2020. Obviously, in the last couple of years, that shifts and changes. But what I thought was really interesting about this information is I pulled 2015, 2020, and then the projected demographics for the year of 2025. And so as you will see here, I broke it based on male residents, female residents, and both. So what I thought was very interesting is, and with the lens of the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, many of the data sets that are posted out nationally, and you'll see in other slides, are typically 65 plus. But I've been told that really the focus should be 55 plus, and that's the core demographic locked into this commission and what we should be able to support here in the town of West Hartford. So on here, I've included 55 plus. What was really interesting to me is out of the 55 plus populations, that population grew 2.5% from the year 2015 until when we did our last census in 2020, and it is expected to continue to grow another 2.1% as we hit the year 2025. And so those percentages are the total growth percentages of the entire population of West Hartford. Now, West Hartford is seeing some very minor population decline. So as we hear folks talk about West Hartford in a general sense, we always say that we're one of those communities in Connecticut that is slated to grow. Based on what the census is tracking, they track us to see a very minor decrease in population, but really only less than 1,000 people as we hit the year 2025. Next slide. Next, I wanted to discuss our housing stock. So this information I pulled from our affordable housing plan. That is a plan that we are working to adopt. We hope as a town to adopt it formally in the month of May. This affordable housing plan is something that is encouraged and to some extent required by the state of Connecticut for all municipalities to create a plan and adopt a plan that discusses their current level of affordability, what that housing stock looks like, mechanisms and goals to be able to increase it. A side note here, we are currently, out of all of the housing units that we would consider to be affordable, we're at approximately 7.3% of all units are considered affordable. This plan, the goal is to hit and then exceed 10% of all units being affordable. So these housing statistics that were ultimately pulled from the U.S. Census from 2020, if you will, it looks like a light show in here.
Turn this one off.
Yes.
Thank you.
For right now, probably not. Let me speak to it, but we absolutely can figure out a way to get this content and information to everybody as a follow-up. So as I indicated, I'm happy to print copies and leave them here for you all to pick up after the fact. I didn't come with any today, hindsight. We also can make it available digitally. You're welcome. So housing occupancy, this is an overall snapshot of our housing stock. The items that I thought were interesting here is of all housing units in West Hartford, so that is single family, multifamily, as well as some additional types of units, as you'll see in the housing unit structures. Over to the right-hand side, of all of our units, which exceed about 27,000 units in total, we have owner vacancy rate of 1.3%, which is on par with our Hartford County vacancy rate, so that's extremely low. I will get to another slide in a few moments that talks about that number in more detail. And then our renter vacancy is, in terms of this graphic, when it was originally created was December of 2023, and it shows our renter vacancy rate at 4.4%. It has recently risen to about 7.5% of all units are vacant. The primary reason is we have a lot of construction and we have a lot of new units that are hitting the market.
So we do expect for that to eventually go back down, but many projects are currently working to lease those brand new units, and that is the difference. So ultimately what we see here is a large number of units. However, our demand really exceeds supply in every way, shape, and form. Other things on here that I thought were really interesting to speak to is average household size, owner-occupied. Average household size is 2.58 persons per household, and then average household size on the renter-occupied, anyone who is renting units, is 2.06 persons per household. We did not have a breakdown in terms of the renter-occupied, how they're translating that to the number of bedrooms per unit. It's just saying out of all of the different types of housing that you have, that is currently for renters 2.06%. Next slide. And then this is another graph that was taken out of the Affordable Housing Plan, also used from and pulled from the U.S. Census of 2020. This speaks to the housing share breakdown. So further breaking down the numbers that we saw on the previous page, of all of the units that we have in town, again, that is single-family home, multi-family, so on and so forth. What I highlighted here, and this is one of those data sets that speaks to 65 plus as the cohort. I highlighted households that are 65 plus. And on here, it talks about owner-occupied housing units, family households, non-family households. So under the family households, where all folks in a household are related, they are considered to be family members under the census. 11.6% of those households are considered 65 plus in West Hartford, and of that, 14.7% are owner units and 4.6 are rental units. Also, of the non-family households, 65 plus, 14.2% are occupied by that age cohort. Owner occupied is 12.7%, rental 17.5%. And then another element that the Commission thought would be important to highlight is the household 65 plus of those residents living alone. So what we have is, of all households, 0.7% are living alone in that age cohort, and just under 1% are owner-occupied, and 0.5% are rental units. So all of this data, what was really interesting to me is, of that 65 plus cohort, occupied units is 26.5% of all of the units that we have townwide. So that's really large. It's very significant, more than a quarter of all units. And of that, the owner-occupied total is 28.2%, and of that, the renter-occupied units, 22.6%. Next slide. All right, so this is second to last that I have, housing inventory that I had referred to. So what I put together here is, this is accurate data, I just pulled it last night. So for March of 2024, our single family inventory, which speaks to the number of single family homes that is currently available on the market for sale, is only 35. So that is down almost 40% from the inventory level that we saw in March of 2023. So that's significant. We are one of the communities in the state of Connecticut that has the lowest single-family inventory. We also, while I didn't put this on the slide, our inventory goes very, very quickly. So from when a single-family home hits the market until it is closed is typically ranging somewhere between 40 and 45 days in order for that home to sell.
so instantaneously. And then also condos. Our condo inventory is 17 currently, and that is up a whopping 183% from where we were in 2023. What's interesting there is those data sets indicate that single family homes are much more attractive right now to the folks that are looking to buy in West Hartford than condos. Although that's such a surprising large number, that is still a very low inventory in order to have on the market. But just speaking about the fact that people who are looking at West Hartford as a new option, or even as someone who is a longtime resident who is looking for a different option, what they are most interested in is single family homes or some of the multifamily rental apartment units that we have here in West Hartford. And over to the right-hand side, what I pulled was information about multifamily. This is where we see that 7.5% of all units are vacant right now. But again, that really is attributed to the fact that we have so many new units that are coming online and available to current residents and future residents. Of all the multifamily units that we have, our inventory is currently about 2,700. And then this is a slide where most definitely I will have to hand this out because I did the best that I could. Next slide, sir. To put this on the screen, but it's very small. I apologize. I very much so apologize. So what this is that I will explain to you is town staff has been tracking all of the development that we have in different pipelines, I will say, different areas of approval, under construction, so on and so forth. So where they are in the process. So this graph speaks to all of that new development. So as a highlight, the top data set speaks to projects that are in the pipeline. That includes 579 New Park. That includes 17 Asylum Avenue, the east side parcel of the former UConn campus that was approved last night. That also includes the former Puritan property on New Britain Avenue. So of these three projects that are in different areas, I think that this month all three should receive approval. That totals 509 new units. Of all of those units, 58 of those units will be available at affordable pricing. And then the middle area talks about projects that have been approved, as well as those that are currently under construction. I won't run through all of them, but just to give you an understanding of what that mostly includes is fellowship housing across the street that Mark will talk about, a couple of projects in West Hartford Center, and then it also speaks to a expansion of the development over on Steel Road, so on and so forth. So of all of these projects that have been approved within the last year, as well as ones that are currently under construction, so those that have not started but are approved, those that you currently see construction on, that totals 474 new apartment units. Of that, the total number of units offered at different levels of affordability are 181. So that's over about 8 different projects. And then lastly, we also included recently completed on that list is the One Park redevelopment, which is the former Sisters of St. Joseph. That is 294 units in total. 540 New Park, which is Trump Realty Advisors, the development arm of the West Hartford Housing Authority, their newest project that they opened on New Park Avenue, and then the residences at Berkshire Road, which is also over on New Britain Avenue, but closer to Corbin's Corner. Of those 3 projects, 372 total apartment units, and 73 of those units are offered at an affordable rate. And so the totals for this, of all categories, So this is really a snapshot of the last 3 years, from when the very first project on the list put a shovel in the ground to start construction, all the way through those 2 projects that I referred to on New Park Avenue that should get their land use approvals later this month. 1,355 new units, and 312 of those units will be at some level of affordability, which is great. So we have a lot of multifamily housing, as you see, coming down the pike. The last thing that I will note before I hand this over to Mark is what I personally really like about West Hartford is from an economic development perspective, and when you're talking about housing and providing additional opportunities for current residents and future residents, I would say with the exception of the former UConn campus, all of these projects are occurring on properties that already have a structure there. So it is not taking large tracts of land and redeveloping it. It's really taking properties that are vacant, they've fallen into disrepair, they perhaps no longer function the way that they were intended to, 40, 50, sometimes 70 years ago. And we're working with people who are coming in and demolishing those often really sad, tired, falling apart buildings and building new. So, that's something that I really like, and I think has been a concerted effort of the town because we don't have tons and tons of available land. So, just a note there. Are we holding questions till the end?
Thanks very much.
Excuse me, questions? I'll be at the end.
Great, thank you. I'll be back if you have questions.
Thanks very much for your time, and certainly you can see West Hartford is growing exponentially. Now I'd like to ask you to please welcome Heather Zoller, who is actually then will share the state of the older adult living world in a live sense. So Heather.
Thank you, Kevin. Is the volume okay?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Again, my name's Heather Zoller. I appreciate being invited here to talk with you and the chance to meet many of you this morning. So we'll start this section again with a little bit of audience participation to help us learn more about all of you. So we'll go again with a show of hands with a few questions here. So the first question is, how many in the audience plan to remain in your homes as long as possible? But also quite a few not, so it's interesting. Yeah. Okay, and then the second question is, how many of you have visited a senior living community, either for yourself or to visit a friend who lives there? Most everyone. Okay, great. Thank you. And then final question is, and we'll make this, I think, specific to West Hartford, how many of you feel that the options, if you were to move somewhere other than your home here in West Hartford, are limited? Okay. Good. Thank you. Okay. Go to the slide. So I was asked to share with all of you my perspective on recent trends in the senior living field. I've worked for the past about 25 years with mainly not-for-profit, mostly continuing care retirement communities around the country. And I can speak to a few of the trends that we're seeing now. One of the biggest that's being talked about, not just here in West Hartford, but everywhere, is and I'll get into this in a minute, but this concept of the forgotten middle, so the middle market. So what's on the slide now is some headlines just from the past few years. Of course, headlines are always meant to be a little dramatic, but some of these say things, like older adults with middle incomes are trapped in the affordable housing gap. Many middle-income seniors will not be able to pay for long-term care and housing in 10 years. I'm not going to read all of them, but a couple of keywords there. They do say many. It's not necessarily the majority, I'll say. And then one on the bottom left, the forgotten middle. Many middle-income seniors will have insufficient resources for housing and healthcare. So this term, the forgotten middle, we can go to the next slide here. Yeah, we'll just go. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. The forgotten middle, this term was really coined by a group at the University of Chicago, the National Opinion Resource Center, or Research Center, excuse me. So I pulled some data that they have provided. They've been doing extensive research in this area. And they define the middle market. So the middle here, and I can kind of talk through what you're seeing, but the orange bars in the middle, they're defining on the left, these are numbers of seniors age 75 plus in 2018 on the left and 2033 on the right. So across about 15 years. And the orange, the middle, in 2018 they defined that as having annual incomes between $25,000 and $100,000. So that's on a national basis. It doesn't necessarily apply specifically to West Hartford, and Mark is going to speak to that more specifically in his section. But just to provide some general context, what you can see here is it's really quite interesting that the first I'll comment that the lowest, the lower income is showing that it's decreasing. Okay. The middle is almost doubling, and then the high income group is nearly quadrupling. Okay. Now, one thing I'll call out, and I think a lot of us are talking about in the field, is that within that middle income bar, right, there can be a number of people towards the lower part of that may end up, tipping over into low income. It can take really just one event or something happening in your life for that to change. But even with that, those are large numbers in total, and then the growth in each of those categories. So we talk about the forgotten middle before we go on. We talk about the forgotten middle because there's a perception, and I think it's based in reality, that there's more options available for people in the higher income group and in the lower income group. So the higher income group is where people can afford more easily to make choices like moving to a private pay assisted living or an independent living or an entrance fee community, or to bring care and services into their home. And then on the lowest, for the lower income group, that's where the focus has been more on the public sector side through affordable housing tax credits, or using Medicaid to pay for skilled nursing or home health. But that middle group often has fewer options available. And I'll say, based on my work with a lot of development projects, it's not necessarily that developers are saying, we only want to serve high income. I work mostly with not-for-profits, and a lot of them would like to serve more middle income, but the reality is that construction costs are very, very expensive, and so it often ends up pushing, the price point higher. So this is stepping back a little bit and just looking at some demographic trends. The other thing that's talked about all the time in our field is, and having been in this field now for 20 years, since I started, it's been like, oh, the baby boomer wave is coming, and now it's here. So what this is showing is that, between the years of 2017 and 2035, the group that's age 75 or older doubles. Okay, and so that's by 2035. We're basically 10 years before that now, so the age 65 group basically is more than doubled. So there's increasing demand, increasing numbers of people that will need additional services or be looking for options for different living situations. And then on the right, there's a chart, and I realize it's kind of small, but it's basically marrying up the number of people age 80 and the housing supply, seniors housing supply. And right now, the first few years on the left, it's basically a point of equilibrium. There's basically enough supply for the demand that has been there the last few years. But what you see is that gap increasing, where there's projected to be a housing shortage there's not enough seniors housing being built to keep up with the demographics that are coming. This next chart, this is really a quick little history thing, but and I know it's small, but on the far right, what this is basically saying, on the far right, the focus of the senior living field used to be very need-driven. So far right is like hospital, skilled nursing, very acute care, very medical focused. And then, over the last 20 years or so, a lot of other options have been introduced, including assisted living, memory care specialties, adult day care services, continuing care at home, independent living, and it started to become more and more unbundled, more and more options available, and more toward a want-driven, looking more for lifestyle and experiences, not just medical needs, right? So that shift has already been happening. And the question is kind of where are we going next as we continue? The trends that are happening is that the expectation is that will continue to evolve more and more away from sick care and more towards prevention and wellness and lifestyle. And I included, and I'm glad if we'll provide these slides to everyone. I'll call out, there's a quote at the bottom of this page that I actually think is pretty interesting, so I'll share it. Bob Kramer is a leader in our field, and he had said back in 2017, so before the pandemic, he said, in the future, healthcare will go to where seniors, especially frail seniors, live, rather than forcing these seniors to go to the hospital or doctor's office to receive their health care. Boomer consumers will demand it, technology will enable it, and payers, especially managed care, will pay for it because they believe it will produce meaningful healthcare dollar savings. So, pretty crazy that just like that, and really, the other kind of takeaway here, the title of the slide being Acceleration of Change, the pandemic really accelerated that. It really brought technology, we probably leaped ahead 10 years in terms of how healthcare is being delivered through technology. Okay. So, thank you. This is to share a little bit about, what options are here today, and then again, where we see things going in the future. So the options that have been here for a while now, but again, have been evolving, include things like independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, life plan or entrance fee communities, village concepts, 55 plus active adult communities, affordable housing, which again we'll speak to more in a moment, and in-home solutions. And I would say of all of those, except for the in-home solutions, they're all very, we'll say like bricks and sticks oriented. They're all physical locations. So it was very much about, providing care in a structured, physical campus setting or physical building. The trends are really looking at, okay, yes, there's going to continue to be more housing built, but the reality is probably there will never be enough. And so the focus has also been on expanding services beyond physical locations. So right at the top of the list is technology. I have to admit, I'm not someone who's good at imagining like the future until it happens. But I'm amazed, like thinking about, we see players coming into the field like Amazon, CVS, they're Best Buy. They're investing hugely in healthcare technology. So just what we've seen in the last few years, I know I can't even really imagine, what we'll be seeing in the next 5 or 10 years, but we know that will be a big part of the answer for how people access, services when they need them. Other things that, and again, this is changing consumer preferences really, is not just, oh, I'm going to move here and there's going to be a set program and I have to adapt to it. It's really, consumers now are looking for what are their personal preferences and being able to choose a la carte you know, here's what I want to participate in, here's what I need right now, I might need that later. So really providing a lot of consumer choice, a lot more a la carte offerings, and a big emphasis on wellness, again, away from sick care, but really on healthy living and purpose and connection and, you know, not just longevity, but longevity, right? So living healthier longer, I think, is going to be a big focus of senior living communities and services to people who stay at home. And I'm going to wrap up with a couple of thoughts on development-specific challenges and opportunities. And this is maybe a little bit focused on building development, but you know, some of the challenges, especially in the Northeast, land is a challenge. Kristen touched on, you know, in West Hartford specifically. That's a challenge throughout the Northeast. The cost of construction, as I mentioned, it's gone up exponentially in the last few years. It's unbelievable. Every time I turn around, the construction costs are higher. There's been supply chain disruption issues these last few years, interest rates going up. So none of those things help with serving the middle market, especially. And on the opportunity side, though, obviously there's increasing demand in terms of numbers. I think there's also increasing, you know, and that says increasing interest, it was supposed to be changing interest, but people are looking for different options, right? So there's opportunity there to create different types of solutions. Technology, which I already talked about, and then collaborations and partnerships. I think the organizations that are successfully serving the middle market are doing that through partnerships where they're not necessarily building a place that has to be everything, but partnering with the local hospital or university or nursing schools or you know, even local restaurants and things like that, coming up with creative ways to collaborate and not have to provide everything themselves. So I think that those things, the partnerships and technology especially, are going to be the ways to broaden the reach into the middle market.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Mark really take it away, sir. Mark, and thanks, Heather. Heather, by the way, touched on a very key points relative to age-appropriate housing, which is what we're trying to do a better job of defining and implementing. So thank you, Heather, and Mark, take it.
Kevin, thank you very much. Heather, Kristen, thank you. All right, so we're on the last leg of this before we get to questions and answers. So I hope that you're all writing your questions down and prepared to ask a few questions at the end of this. But you also probably didn't know that you were here for a chair exercise class, and so we're going to ask you to raise your hands again, stretch a little bit. A couple of questions for the group. Show of hands. How many already have a plan in place, or at least seriously thinking about your next steps? Maybe 15%? 20%? You think so? Can we see those hands again? Up high, stretch.
I'd say that's about 50%.
Okay, 50%. There. Very good. And how many have a desire to stay right here in West Hartford? And I think Heather probably established this already, either at your home or in an alternative setting. And I'm just curious what people think about the biggest differentiators or determinants between choosing to age in place at home versus moving to a community setting. How many would say maybe finance, right? Finance is the most important thing. Maybe 10, 15%. And how about is healthcare the dominant reason? Healthcare, health. So if you're moving to a community setting and you know the healthcare is right there for you, that's the most important reason to go. So 0. How about no? That's wait. Okay, 1 to 2. And lastly, what about socialization? Socialization, activity, programming, lifestyle. Good percentage. Okay.
30%.
All right, so. Change is hard, right? We're all here, I think, because we're in that thinking stage. But we created a discovery tool to really first establish your mindset. When we're ever thinking about change or what's next or the next steps that we have to take in some big milestone, setting our minds to it and making it actually form into a plan takes some work, but it also takes a little bit of convincing to yourselves, right? And so we create 4 quadrants. On one side, there's the denial stage, right? So anybody in the denial stage, I've got Delvin right here, right? There's no need to think about this. Nothing's going to go wrong. Everything's going to be perfect. Oh, sorry. Oh, no. So we got to do the denial stage, right? And so, and then folks in the thinking stage, right? So getting from that denial stage right to the thinking, I'm thinking about it. Geez, maybe there's something that we should be talking about. I should be thinking about next steps. I have no idea what that is, but I know that we're starting to think about some changes in our lives. And then the next quadrant is the action stage. You're actively looking, you're making lists, you're talking about what your needs are. And then lastly, planning, right? You're in the planning phase. I think about, a couple of maybe common examples about this. I think about my 17-year-old son. He's a junior at Northwest Catholic right now, and he's thinking about what's next, right? Colleges. I will tell you, he's still in the denial stage, right? I got plenty of time. I don't have to worry about it, right? Well, we don't want him to be left behind, so we're trying to push him into the thinking stage because there's a lot of work that's got to get him from where he's going to be to planning, and these are my top 5 schools, and this is what I want to study. We're a long way away from that, but our time is shrinking. So I'm going to start sending them some job applications pretty soon. Right, even with our health, right? I had a doctor's visit. Health is great. Hey, your cholesterol is going up a little bit. Maybe it's now time to think about what's next. That diet, right? I got to set that mindset to start to work towards improving that, improving my health numbers, right? I just turned 55. I just entered into, this demographic, so thank you very much for welcoming me in the demographic. But I will tell you, I've been in that denial stage for a long time because it hasn't even been top of my list. I finally established a meeting with my financial advisor. We're finally going to start thinking about retirement. It's probably something I should have done 10 years ago, right? But it's a hard conversation to have. I have it every day, kind of with my mom after Dad passed. It's just really establishing that mindset and putting yourself into it. And while you're thinking about it, what you really need to focus on is meeting your priorities. Everybody familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So Maslow talked about different priorities, and at the bottom of the pyramid, it talks about your physiological needs, right? So there's some of us in this world who are happy with just a roof over their head, food, a place to sleep, give me my recliner and my Westerns, and I am good to go, right? I don't want to know from nobody. Most of us like to have some next level of safety and security. We want to know that when we lock the door at night that we're safe, that our financial situation is safe, and that we've got some stability. Next level, intimacy, family, right, that sense of belonging. Most of us feel like we want to have that in our lives and what that looks like. And then, of course, there are higher esteems where they're reaching to prestige or a feeling of accomplishment. In our jobs, our titles might be important in our lives, whatever we might accomplish, or even self-actualization, achieving your full potential, right? So whatever it is that you're deciding and planning, you should be identifying with a lot of your, where are you on this needs chart, and what is going to meet your priorities as you set the stage for your planning for your next steps. So we'll talk a little bit first about should I stay. So will your home continue to meet your needs as you age? So what do we talk about when we talk about what it means to stay at home? It might mean home renovations, might mean some bathroom updates maybe, so walk-in showers, some ADA accessibility. It might mean integrated home care, so bringing someone in to help you with groceries or any of the activities of daily living that are harder to do than you might have been able to do in your earlier age. Right? I have a hard time getting up in the morning and making it down the stairs. We have a drive-in garage, another set of stairs, and another set of stairs. I can tell you when we bought that house, my wife and I said, "We're never doing this again. You are going to bury me in this home." That's not the case, and we know that, right? But you know, or it's making changes so that we can accommodate things on first floor. I own a house here in West Hartford for about 15 years. A colonial, 3-bedroom colonial, detached garage, 2-story, laundry in the basement. Sound familiar? Right, okay. So most of you have similar situations, built in 1950, right? The house needs to be changed to accommodate your needs as we age. Integrated technology, Heather already touched a lot on integration, but these things can really make a difference in our lives. Our cell phones, how we integrate, you can take your blood pressure with these, you can do all kinds of different things now that you couldn't do with technology. And I think COVID really did fast forward the use of technology in home and healthcare. So maintenance, landscaping, snow removal, and really lifestyles. Are you able to drive? Are you able to get out? Are you able to do all the things you like to do and stay active and make sure that you are enriched in your life? So that's staying at home. Should I go? So we talk about what does it mean to move to a community setting. Usually means preparing for big changes. Selling your home. It's a lot of work. Downsizing, it means going from maybe a 3,000 square foot home down to 1,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet. There's all kinds of options. It means new routines. I can tell you when we moved Mom out of the house, Dad had passed, and it took about 3 years. Mom ultimately ended up going to a condo community. She's 84 years old. She still drives. She teaches bridge. She's very active in the community. And that was what was the right option for her at the time. But when I talk about new routines, I can't tell you how many times going to see Mom and I pull into Tim Clark Circle and I go, oh my gosh, she doesn't live here anymore. And then turn around and go to the new place, right? Her new routines and things that change that you've been doing for 30 years that change. New belongings, things that come in, you know, what else? There's so many other things that factor into moving to a new community. So a little bit more on should I go though, but moving to a community setting also usually means more independence and more freedom. Freedom from home maintenance and repairs, access to all-inclusive healthcare, creating new friends, access to socialization, more choices at your fingertips. Your space might be smaller, but the community at large typically has more offerings for you than just in your home. And transportation needs, you might not need your car anymore, or you might not need your second car anymore, or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of different things to consider about should I stay at home? Can I meet my needs? Can I meet my priorities at home? Or is a community setting going to meet my needs better? And that's not always the case. What fits for one isn't always going to be the right fit for everyone. So this next slide is my humble attempt, who's not a financial advisor, but to kind of come up with just a very simple scenario on the dollars and cents and the cost of it all. This is very bare bones basic, but just even in talking with my financial planner, right, you consider all of the things in blue at the top of the circle, if you will, the two quadrants. What are your biggest assets? What's your biggest, what's your worth? What's your value? What is it that you're going to spend down over the rest of the course of your life? And I hope you spend it on yourself. It's if you own a home, let's say, most folks here in the room do, and I'm using round numbers, so I picked $500,000 as a home sale. And if you sell that home at $500,000 and you look to the top left, what's that going to get you in terms of just straight housing? If you wanted to go just talk rental units, and you picked $5,000 a month, how long is that going to last you? About 8 years. You could pay $5,000 a month on $500,000 of home sales for about 8 years. Math works out to be a little bit more than that, but at the end of the day, we know that every penny of your dollar sale isn't going to be yours, and that rent isn't going to stay the same for 8 years. It's going to go up incrementally, right? So whatever you're going to do, if it's a rental change, just think in terms of how long that would last. If you found something at $4,000 a month, might last you 10 years, and at $3,000 a month, might last you 13 plus years. On the right side, you've got your retirement, maybe another $500,000 in savings. Maybe you've got an income with a small pension or a Social Security dollars, right? I just did this as one example. Everybody's situation is different. But your $500,000 in retirement, at let's say a $30,000 a year draw, whatever your mandatory distribution is, might last you about 15 years at that pace. That's if you didn't need anything, that's if you didn't need to borrow against it, roughly around 15 years. Remember, you're paying taxes, everything else on those dollars. And then let's say you've got another $30,000 in income every year. That's for the foreseeable future. Your investments, your stocks, whatever your savings are. Those are, in my opinion, your biggest buckets of things. Maybe you've got some valuables. Maybe you've got a classic car. Maybe you've got something. Maybe you have a second home. All of those things you have to kind of contribute into what your assets and income are that ultimately you're going to spend down. And when thinking about this, how long is my money going to last me for as long as possible? And then on the bottom, we've got expenses, cost of living and cost of care. On the right, cost of living, food, utilities, transportation, insurances, and then on the left, cost of care. We pulled a few numbers from Glenworth Financial, who had a national platform where you could plug in your area and it would populate with averages for the Hartford area. And so for homemakers and companionship, anywhere from maybe $4,000 to $8,000 a month, depending on your needs. If you needed someone to come in to help you with your grocery, maybe help you with a med reminder, help you with a shower, unskilled, this is non-skilled home care services, it could cost you, or if you need a 24-hour caregiver, somebody to live in your home every single day, 24 hours a day, the cost can start to add up. Adult daycare is about $2,000 to $3,000 a month. Assisted living, anywhere from $5,000 to $9,000 a month. That does tend to incorporate the rental piece of that too, right? You walk into assisted living, might be paying $5,000 to $9,000 a month, depending on, it includes meals, it includes your services, it depends on the services that you need, what level of care you need. There are lots of things to consider when looking at assisted living. Memory care tends to be more costly. And then a nursing home, on average, is about $13,000 to $15,000 a month. That's if it was out of pocket, you had to pay for it, spend down your money first, and those are kind of what we pulled off of this general financial. So what happens when we run out of money? So really, the Medicare and Medicaid are the two payer sources that really contribute as we spend down our dollars. And it's important to note that Medicare is for healthcare, but typically doesn't cover the cost of housing or medical and non-medical home care. If you did go to a skilled nursing facility, you could be paying a Medicare rate, which is higher than a Medicaid rate. It's a daily rate, but you'd be spending down your income and assets before before Medicaid would kick in. Medicaid, if you qualify, would cover the cost of home care costs, so private duty aid or being homemakers, if you qualify, you can apply to the state for that, and as well as nursing home stay. So I was asked to share a little bit about income limits for affordable housing. And I pulled the data from the 2024 income limits. I spared you from the charts of all of the options, and I really just picked this 80% or less. of area median income. And if Kristen's slide, if you have an opportunity to capture it, you'll see all of the properties that she listed identify varying levels of affordability. So you heard Kristen talk about 500 or so affordable units. Is that right? Or 100 yes, about 400 affordable options, whether they've just been built or they're on their way. Right, 312, and 10 of those communities that Kristen shared talk about 80% of AMI. That means there's units that are within those communities that are established for those folks who meet 80% of area median income. Area median income, it's just this happy medium of income levels in our geographical area. So for West Hartford, Farmington, Simsbury, Avon, it's about $121,000 a year for a family of 4. And then they break it down by 3-person family, 2-person family, and so the numbers that you see up here, single-person family is about $68,000 a year or less. So that's your income. If you have investments and it spins off dividends, if the dividends, it's not the investment, it's the dividends that spin off that consider your income. If you have assets or a CD that gives you a return, it's the return on the CD that is included as your income. So as a single person family, just one individual living in the home, it's $68,000, and for a 2-person family, so for you and your spouse, it's $78,000 a year. So in the example I shared with an income of about $60,000 plus with savings and things like that, that individual might actually qualify, even though they've sold their home, they own a home, they sold their home, they have savings, they still have an opportunity to move into what's classified by our state and federal agencies as affordable. And so there are places that are being constructed. West Hartford Fellowship Housing currently does not have any places that meet that 80% standard. What we're building currently across the street is through tax credits, and those tax credits identify folks who are at 30% of AMI, so very low income, extremely low income, 25,000 or so, 50% of AMI, which is around 42,000, and 60% of AMI. There's a couple of 2-bedroom units that are going to be at that 60% AMI, and that's in the $50,000 range. So that's for your income, not for the cost of the unit. Right? And so what happens is the rents get capped. So we borrow our money from the state. The state provides our capital dollars to build that first set of buildings that you see going on across the street, or through state bond money, through federal home funds, through HUD subsidies, through the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, tax credits, about $1.8 million in tax credits, and that converts to about $17 million in private investment. And so it's this big capital stack that helps us create the dollars, because as the nonprofit with very low rents, the organization does not have the type of capital to invest in something like that. And the state our investors buy those tax credits, and then they get those tax credits in return to give us the dollars to build the buildings. And then our promise that we have to deliver on is maintaining those affordability levels, not renting to somebody that's outside of those affordability levels, and to do it for the next 40 years. So we can't change those units. We can't decide later to just rent up or change the market rents. Our rents are capped based on how the state and federal agencies decide that's going to happen. And so, so that was it on the affordable housing. Very quickly, we wanted to leave you with a couple of consumer resources. West Hartford, State of Connecticut, and others. These are listed on those handouts. We started with a much bigger list, and we identified that there are so many different private providers it would be difficult to list them all for you. Right here, the West Hartford Senior Center, Becky and her team have a ton of resources to share with you with your hands. Social Services Department in West Hartford, and of course the Senior Citizens Advisory Commission The state has some great websites, Area Agency on Aging. There are 5 agencies across the state. They are now one under a blanket or an umbrella of Aging CT, My Place CT 211, right? And then there's a whole lot of other opportunities to reach out for resources. So we want to leave you with, before we can build the world we want to live in, we have to first imagine it. And today gives us a very first step in identifying that what the need is. You all shared a show of hands in what it was that you'd be interested in, where you are currently in your current situations. We do have the survey that would help us to identify more. So as we continue to imagine what the right fit for folks are and what the next trends will be, we really have to imagine it before we can build it. And then last slide is just questions and answers. I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. This has been wonderful. I'm going to pass the mic, so to speak, to Becky, who's going to Beth, who's going to answer questions as they come. So Beth, how would you like to work the crowd, so to speak?
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And thank you for coming. Questions of a very personal nature that you don't feel will be of interest to the audience, we'd ask you to stay and maybe speak with the panelists after the general question and answer period. At the same time as the questions and answers, we are passing out a quick survey asking you about what other topics you would be interested in hearing about along the housing line. I would also be remiss to not thank and have you give a round of applause for our 3 panelists this morning. Thank you very much. The other thing that I'd like to spend 30 seconds doing is to ask, there are some of you in the audience who provide these types of services. So I'm going to ask Rob and Claire from the Senior Job Bank to stand up. Thank you. We also have the 2 social workers from the town of West Hartford, Karen Paquette, Monique, would you stand up? They are particularly geared to helping seniors. We have, in addition, one of our elder care attorneys from town who used to be our co-chairman, Rebecca Josie. And she works in the private sector and she's really wonderful. We also have here Jill Corrado. Would you stand up? Jill is the new CEO, is that correct? Of the West Hartford Housing Authority, which is a quasi-public agency which deals with vouchers and subsidized housing. So now, those of you who have questions, I will pass you the mic, and whichever panelist you feel is best able to answer. Yes, you have. Oh, she wanted us to return to a slide. I would like you all to be aware that we are going to make these slides and this show available. I should also thank Jennifer Evans from West Hartford Community Interactive, our local TV station. On my set, it's Channel 5. I don't know for you. But she is going to provide a link to the program, so if you want to watch it again at home. And it's also possible that Mark can make his slides available. And if you give us a couple of days, we'll get something out to you, particularly if you leave your email on these sheets and drop them in the survey box at the back here. So,
about one of the slides that said something about Medicaid, parentheses, if you qualify. I think you would like to know what the qualifications would be in Medicaid.
I can tell you, you have to spend down to $1,600, you can own a home. And it is an onerous process of about 50 pages of documents and 50 pages of applications. And it's income-based. There are certain assets you cannot have. You cannot have an IRA, you cannot have an annuity, and I'm not sure, can you have a CD?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's gone.
Money's gone.
It's gone, $1,600. And, you know, those are the questions that elder care attorneys and estate planning people can help you with.
Also, they go back and look up.
Oh, yeah. Those documents, those 50 pages, they want to know basically every single expense for 5 years of both you and if you've had a spouse die, those assets and income as well.
Right, so you can't just,
You can't hide anything
Give all
from
your
them.
money
Can
to-
you, Rebecca? Can you hide anything from these people?
You try.
I'm curious about condos for seniors. A lot of us who own houses have trouble with the idea of taking all that equity and spending it on rent. And I know that financially it might make more sense because you move into a condo and you have to pay a condo fee. But the condo fee is normally less than rent and your equity stays in the condo. I don't know if condo prices are increasing in value the way they have in the past, but there's that feeling of that my nest egg is there. There's something to leave my children, as opposed to rent that just goes. And actually, I live in Bethesda, Maryland, so I'm sort of cheating being here. But my daughter's family is here, my grandchildren are here. I'm 74, my husband's 78. We have an old house. I'd like to move here. He wants to stay there, which I think is a common male-female situation that I'd love to talk to people about. And I don't see where I fit here. I don't see sort of an active senior. I mean, I went and looked at Doncaster yesterday. It's beautiful, but maybe 10 years from now. And so that's what I'm curious about. Where would I fit?
so where would you fit in West Hartford as in an individual place? I would point to Kristen or others in the audience, but that might have that. I can just tell you from, I have to be careful, I see my cousin. So I can just share my story about my mom, right? So she lived in a home for 40 years with Dad, ended up moving into a condo community. She did sell her home and took those proceeds and purchased the condos. So it was a one-for-one. She didn't have to worry about rent. Yes, there are condo association fees, and they go up, just like rent goes up. And there are other fees that come along with making sure that the condo community stays relevant and continues to look good. The association does kind of control a little bit how you do and what you do, but it is your home. You own it. You're usually responsible for everything in it, versus if you rent, you have a landlord that should be able to take care of the things that, break. The dishwasher doesn't work, the door sticks, whatever it is. You can call your landlord. When you own a condo, most everything in your condo is your responsibility. So we felt that was the best situation. Mom also looked at continuing care communities, looked at assisted living, felt the same thing. It's just not quite ready for me yet. It does mean that there'll potentially be another move. She wants to integrate healthcare and home care and stay in that condo for as long as she can. So, but it is a 55+ community. Average age is probably 80. And the community does a great job of integrating socialization, cocktail hours, they have a social committee, they have events, they try to go out and do things locally in town. As far as what's here in West Hartford,
Sure, I can take it down with that. So I think your question is really interesting to me because I'm going back to a couple things. One element that Mark had mentioned when discussing, should I go? So if you were to sell your single family home or where you're currently living and you're looking at perhaps a condo, a lot of the upkeep elements go away because they're provided for with that new condo opportunity and the development that you're in. And then I think about also the condo statistics that we've been watching for West Hartford. I get the feeling that a lot of folks, well, you're saying that you're currently living in Maryland. I think that many folks probably in West Hartford are experiencing the same, question, right? Should I sell my single family? Should I move into a condo? Because for West Hartford, up until recently, condos kind of just sat on the market. There was not, they were not seen as quite as attractive as some other options, specifically single family homes and even rental units. And that's been slightly a stagnant market, I would say, for us. And even the statistics I shared earlier, where we're up 180% from last year with our condo inventory, I think that still holds the same. Now, what we don't have is a specific community of condos that's dedicated to this cohort and demographic. So I think that's just some insights that I'd like to share. Not to say that that couldn't happen in the future, it just doesn't currently exist. So I think based on the information that we've learned from this crowd is that's probably the, you're probably questioning the same exact thing, why almost 90%, if not more, said I'm still in my single family home. What are the options can I move into? I think we don't have exactly probably what you're looking for. I will say the closest is probably, I know that housing authorities, well, not condos, they have a non-assisted living facility, community on Farmington Avenue, Alfred Plant. Also on Farmington Avenue, condos is the Hampshire House. While not restricted, I would say that's typically an older demographic, so just some options to throw out there.
There is one option, and that is over at the Reservoir. There are single-family homes. That is a 55-plus community, but they have 3 or 4 3-story condo buildings, and I see them for sale at about $260,000 for 1.5 bedroom unit, but you do have relatively expensive HOA fees there. Okay, there is parking under the building. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I live on Overford Road, and we're doing a big project over at Yukon. I want to know why there's not going to be anything in there for 55+ seniors from West Hartford who want to stay in West Hartford.
Okay, this woman is asking about what was called Oakwood. It's now called Heritage Park. It's the 1700 and 1800 Asylum Avenue. We heard from Kristen that the eastern portion was approved last night. This woman is asking why there is not housing set aside there for seniors. I do know that I spoke at a meeting at St. Joseph's, a neighborhood meeting. I am not a neighbor, but I went to push this issue. There is 114-bed assisted living planned on the western side of that, but a lot of us aren't interested in assisted living. We're interested in rental or owner units. There are townhomes that are going to be available there. I expect them to be pricey.
I just want to note, so what I had referenced, and Beth, thank you so much for that. What I had referenced was exactly the east side of the campus, 2 parcels at 1700 Asylum. That's the only active application that the town had for that particular campus. So that was what was approved last night. 322 units of housing, 8% of those will be affordable at 80% of the area median income. The west side of the campus, 1800 Asylum, they have been planning for several years. Beth is correct. The last iteration of the plans that we saw at the town level
included a large assisted living facility on there. We believe that that was primarily added in our response at a staff level and an administration level of indicating the growing needs of the aging population here in West Hartford. Obviously, assisted living is not for everyone. It depends on what stage you are in your life and what your needs are. However, we have not received updated plans, so we're not exactly sure how those plans have evolved and changed. We expect to see more within the next couple of months.
I don't think we need assisted living. I think we need independent living for people 55 and older.
Kevin Ryan and I have spent 18 months knocking on every door in town hall, from the town planner to the town manager to Mayor Cantor. They all are receptive to our desires for senior housing. However, the town states we are not developers.
So I just want to touch on it for a second. So the issue of condominiums, and condominiums on a national level are interesting, and I'm not sure what we're doing here, but they're growing nationally very interestingly, because you've all heard of the greatest generation. Right behind the greatest generation and right between the boomers is called the quiet generation, smaller, but they're very much focused on things, their life experience, which came out of the Depression. They want to own property. They want to own where they sleep. It's an interesting issue, and we haven't figured that out yet, but there's a whole movement called age-appropriate housing that we're trying to get better definition. We're trying to work on that. It is a walk-in shower, and it is an elevator, access building, etc. But there's a lot more to that. So I think that Kristen's, and I believe the town is working on this issue. We just haven't got it down yet. But condominiums, from what the data would say, are going to be in demand going forward.
I have a question here.
So I've been looking for a while, and I echo everything that everybody said, Lee from Maryland. We're looking for an age-appropriate housing situation, first floor bedroom, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing in West Hartford. I mean, well, there's very little. And if there is, it's way, way, way over what most of us can afford. Now I'm looking at financial affordability, but lifestyle affordability and accessibility. Does the town have any kind of strategic plan to encourage that? You spend a lot of time on making financially accessible housing a priority, but we don't see anything on the age appropriate.
What I can provide in response is, so the affordable housing plan that I had mentioned earlier, that is a plan that we've been working on for close to 2 years. Within that plan, again, which we expect to get formally adopted next month, there is a lot of really great information and indicators that speak to a lot of the concerns and questions that are being raised in terms of affordability and planning for certain generations, so on and so forth. So without that document being formally accepted, we can encourage things, but we don't necessarily have something that is set in stone that we can refer to. So I think we might have more options and opportunities to encourage the private side once that document is formally accepted. But what I will say is we also have our 2020-2030 plan of conservation and development that was adopted in the year of 2020. That's a 10-year roadmap that was basically put together with a lot of different data sets. It involved stakeholder meetings, surveys, you name it. We tried to get in front of a variety and a diversity of the community to understand what the needs are, where they want to see the community go over the course of the next 10 years. And there's some really good speaking points under the economic development as well as the housing category that indicate these growing needs and speak to what we can try to do. The one thing that I will note that's very, two things actually, very quickly, that is very challenging. While the town is not a developer, we do try to speak to the needs of our community, to every developer that we interface with. As I indicated earlier, West Hartford is, what I enjoy about it, but is also a challenge, is the fact that we don't have a lot of big tracts of land. We, for all intents and purposes, we are a fully developed community, so that makes redevelopment even more challenging. And a lot of the private developers need a certain size parcel in order to create a community that you are referring to that you might see in other communities. So we're making a very, at a staff level, a very concerted effort to every single time that we identify a parcel that might be a future opportunity or someone approaches us, we try to discuss with them opportunities, and the two that we have noted as of late the last couple of years are senior housing, what additional options might we be able to create, as well as affordable options. Obviously, there's some overlap between the two.
Thank you. We have time for one or two more questions.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Mickey Lawler. I have lived in this town for 80 years. And for 50 years, I've owned the house I live in now, which thankfully is a one-story house. And when my husband and I bought it, we walked in, we were very young, and we said, look at this, we could grow oak here. Sadly, we did not, but I did. My question is, why is it that the town of West Hartford, unlike so many towns and cities across the country, haven't grandfathered the property taxes for seniors? And this is something, and actually seniors can get a break on property taxes if their income is so low that none of us could live here anyway. So this is something I'd like to see us mobilize a little bit about, because certainly the property taxes keep going up, and it takes, certainly in my income, it takes 1/5 of my entire annual income to pay my property taxes, and I have a very small house. So many of you are paying far more. So that's my thought.
There was another question back here. We did have the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee did have Mr. Joseph Dakers come and explain very thoroughly the tax breaks available to seniors. In addition, there is a trifold handout in the back, which is for the community block fund development. Last year, 8 seniors in this town received an average of $23,000 each for housing rehabilitation. The grant going forward is $320,000, and I spoke to a Mr. Luan Sika, who was wonderful on the phone, who administers that program. He works through the social service, our social workers, and you could speak to them. But again, it is based on income. And this one last question here, and then other questions, just seek us out privately, please. The regular advisory committee meeting will be held from 11:30 to 12 o'clock. And I think maybe the panelists can stay for 5 or 10 minutes if you want to approach them. But this was just a beginning of the conversation, and what I always say is our seniors need to find our voices. The young people have the PTO, and we know how effective they are in getting everything on the school budget each year. The past 2 years I have gone to the town budget meetings. You can count on my 3 fingers how many people attend that or bother to read the town budget. That's how I found out about the community block grant. One more question.
My question, I'll be very brief and more of a statement. One of the needs of older adults, wherever they're living, is socialization. The senior center, I think, is an excellent example of some of the socialization that's available to come in limited hours. But is it a small group of people that are able to take advantage of it? And people may be able to stay in their homes, they may be adapted nicely for them, you know, and care glides and all these other great things that can be adapted. But if you're there alone and you don't have family, and there isn't that contact, that is probably the single most important thing to keeping minds active and keep the body active.
Thank you, and I would be remiss to not thank Becky Sears for making the Senior Center available to this forum. And if you have not signed up to receive the email blast from both the Senior Center as well as from Ronnie Newton, weha.com, I would ask you can find out a lot about what's going on in town just by receiving those things. So again, thank you to Heather and Kristen and Mark for helping us out this